Hi, I'm Sam, and I'm here with 𝐒𝐢𝐬𝐬 for Bits. 𝐒𝐢𝐬𝐬, when you look at the biggest breaches of the last few years, and we're talking hundreds of millions of people affected, how sophisticated are these attacks actually?
Hello, Sam. Hello, everyone. I wouldn't call them sophisticated, but definitely I would say clever because they found a hole in the defenses on the victim's side, whether by people, technology, or process.
Like what?
Well, so for instance, for the examples today, we're talking about the MGM casino where they pretended to be a customer, or you had a bank a bank employee in which the employee enabled remote access software on their computer, and the bank was hacked through that. Or the last example, for instance, the Jaguar Land Rover, where somebody called in and pretended to be an employee.
So before we get into it, quick disclaimer. We're going to avoid using terms such as negligence or gross negligence, because those are legal terms. We're going to be using two phrases today, lapse in judgment and reckless behavior. They're not legal definitions, but just our way of describing the spectrum. 𝐒𝐢𝐬𝐬, what's the difference?
For me, a lapse in judgment is where you have a responsibility and you didn't meet it. The example here, for instance, if an employee leaves the organization, but you didn't delete their account in time, or you're supposed to rotate the passwords for the Wi-Fi, but you didn't do it, you forgot about it, something like that, where there's no malicious intent. However, you didn't meet your responsibility.
Okay, and what's reckless behavior?
A reckless behavior would be a policy existed, an alarm was initiated, somebody told you something happened and you saw it, but you didn't take action. In this instance, it's not a missed checkbox anymore.
So it's not just about what happened, it's about what you knew and how far you let it slide?
I think so. In most of the attacks that I was involved with, I would say the common questions and comments are, I wished I did, I should have, and I could have. And I think for all these questions, you should ask yourself that before, not just as an individual, but an entire organization.
So I'm going to walk through those three examples that we mentioned earlier, and I'd like you to tell me if you think they're a lapse in judgment or reckless behavior, starting with MGM casinos.
So with MGM Casino, I would say a lapse in judgment. Somebody claimed to be a customer. The support desk was trying to do their best and really didn't do a good job validating the customer because the customer just sounded like they're legit. And I would say that's a lapse in judgment.
Okay, and for our next one, Jaguar Land Rover, is that a lapse in judgment or reckless behavior?
I think for that one, it's neither. I think it's a failed process. This person claimed to be an employee and they went through the process and granted them access. I think that one falls a lot more on failed process that wasn't validated or tested beforehand.
And for the third example, that bank example that you have, is that a lapse in judgment or is that reckless behavior?
I would definitely call that reckless behavior. This employee had change management for the night. He didn't want to be at the bank. He installed remote access so that he can do the work from home. Hackers got into his machine first as he's going home and were able to launch their attack using his credentials, his machine. Definitely reckless behavior.
So 𝐒𝐢𝐬𝐬, before we close, do you have any final takeaways for our listeners?
I think it's very easy to identify lapse in judgment or reckless behavior in an individual. It's a lot harder to identify a failed process or a weak process. Go ahead and spend the time on that. In addition, when you're thinking about could we have, should we have, it's a lot easier to answer those questions before an attack happens.
Thanks, 𝐒𝐢𝐬𝐬𝐬, and thanks to those listening. We'll see you next time on Bits.